CURES, sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.
Helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness for our mind, body, and spirit. We're talking about staying sober. There's a trend now about Sober October. And will cutting back on alcohol really improve your gut health, maybe even expand your lifespan? Dr. Jennifer Stagg is a naturopathic physician. She's joining us in studio today to talk about really the new guidelines for alcohol. A lot has changed that people don't realize. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. And people don't realize because the guidelines haven't changed yet in the United States, but other organizations have put out new guidelines in the last year or so. So the World Health Organization has a new position statement, where they're basically no amount of alcohol comes with, consumption comes without risk. So they're saying
no amount.
None. Yeah.
So
none
like even one drink has a risk.
Yeah. So they're like, and the risks, then the Canadians then have new guidelines, and then they sort of put together number of drinks per week, different categories, and what risk comes with that. So 0 to 2, there's not really much risk.
Per week?
Per week.
Okay.
Per week, yes, sorry. Because in the United States currently, it's 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks a day for men.
Wow.
So now Canada is saying both men and women, 0 to 2 drinks would be the lowest risk category. And so the only thing that really happens with that is it could impact really your sleep, maybe a little bit with your mood, possibly some impacts on overall health, but not really high like if you start to go into like the next categories of consumption.
Okay, so let's just like full disclosure that you still have a cocktail every now and then. I've seen you on other social media showing people even how to make a healthier cocktail or all of that. So people are thinking it's such a part of our culture. Mm-hmm. So this is a big change to think that it could contribute to cancer or a heart attack.
Right.
But the data is indisputable?
Yeah, it's pretty clear cut. So when you start like elevating your consumption and you go up over 7 drinks a week, then the risks of cardiovascular disease start coming on board. So before, and even now, we're still being told this messaging of, oh, alcohol's good for your heart. So people are drinking red wine. They're saying this is for my heart health, but it's not.
It's not.
No, it's not.
We should not be thinking that any kind of red wine or anything is good for our heart.
Yeah, it's not good for your heart. But it doesn't mean that you can't ever have a glass of red wine, right? So that's where these guidelines of like a couple of drinks a week would be enough, right? Yeah. Like if you do still want to, enjoy a social glass of wine or even, up to 2 drinks a week.
So if we are talking about why would alcohol, well, first of all, let's say a lot of people have thought, okay, it's healthy for me to have a glass of wine for my heart or for something else. There were certain properties inside red wine that people thought were good for you. Those are still in there, but it's negated by the alcohol?
By the alcohol, exactly. So red wine was really targeted for what's called their polyphenols, resveratrol, like this is one of these anti-aging compounds, but you can get these compounds in other parts of your diet.
Like just to eat a grape?
Yeah. So or dark berries are rich in polyphenols. Green tea is loaded in polyphenols. So if you were drinking like a cup of green tea daily, the health benefits of that majorly outweigh anything. Now we know you're not going to achieve any health benefit from having red wine, really, because it has alcohol in it. So it's the alcohol itself that is the problem.
Okay. So it's kind of like the equivalent of, if we're saying red wine, like I ran out and I ran 3 miles this morning. Oh, that's really good for you. And then I had a fast food supersized meal for lunch.
Yeah.
So you just took away the alcohol itself, being the fast food. The alcohol itself, we're now realizing, really changes us from the inside out. Can you talk about why it's putting us at risk for these diseases?
Yeah, so the research is really looking like what alcohol does to the body is it impacts the microbiome in your gut. So your like natural gut flora, that good bacteria that's in your gut. And it can also set you up for having something called leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And that's where the health risks of cardiovascular disease, cancers, neurological disorders, anything inflammatory, diabetes as well. All these conditions that are chronic disease are related to and key in the development of those conditions are alterations in your gut microbiome and intestinal permeability. So that's what the science is showing.
So there's so much on the internet about gut health now. If you're listening to this podcast, I assume you're interested in wellness and like, you know, whether it be perimenopause, menopause, health, anything, everyone's talking about probiotics. And I know in the world of integrative medicine, that's like just foundational. You would take a probiotic every day because our gut health controls so much.
Right. It's so critical. Like I just went away for a conference this weekend and I spoke on the microbiome and the effects of microbiome health and, you know, what is happening in our culture, why we all have such bad microbiomes. But that's really the key issue in all these like chronic conditions, as I said. So when we're thinking
Why do we
about,
all have a bad microbiome?
well, so mostly it's multiple different factors, but a lot of it is our food supply. So processed food, ultra processed food, a lot of those fillers, additives, these artificial ingredients in there, and certainly like a lot of processed flour and sugar and corn. All of that is really bad for your gut bacteria, and pesticides, all the chemicals in our environment, that really is just like doing a number on our gut. And then of course things that are part of our society, stress, not sleeping enough, all those sorts of things, right?
Yeah. So back to the alcohol. So the alcohol is destroying that delicate balance.
Yeah. So it does impact how the bacteria is sort of, you know, how those communities are playing out in the gut. And so that's something we call dysbiosis, right? And people might be familiar with bacterial overgrowth. SIBO is something that, you know, we've talked about before, the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. There's also CFO, fungal overgrowth. So not only does alcohol impact the bacteria in your gut, it also sets you up to have overgrowth of fungus. And then that really is, there's a lot more association with that, with diabetes, obesity, weight gain with that.
Yeah. So a lot of research coming out saying that if you want to lose weight, and so many people do, that just stopping drinking can make a huge difference. And it's not just because of the calories. So alcohol can really be a link to obesity.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, like alcohol is higher calorically. So alcohol per gram is 7 calories. And to put that into perspective, carbohydrate and protein would be 4 grams, right? So now you're almost up double. Fat, we know, is more dense in energy, so that's 9 grams or 9 calories per gram. So you've got alcohol already, like a little bit more higher calories for the number of grams you're consuming. But also then with the alcohol, it really does impact how the signaling happens in the gut. So for fat storage, fat breakdown, that's a big issue too. So that's a key part of, why you would have a problem metabolically, is that you are storing more fat. It impacts some of your hunger signals as well. So people tend to eat a lot more food when they're consuming alcohol. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so a lot of us will realize, okay, my kids can have a bagel and cream cheese and I can't.
Yeah.
and alcohol doesn't make that phenomenon any better. Like you're just not going to process carbs and things like that any better.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So so if you're cutting out alcohol, not only are you like getting rid of some calories, you're probably going to like maybe not eat as much, which matters, right? Calories still do count. But then what you're eating is not going to get, like, you're going to burn fat in your body a little bit more effectively. You're not going to store as much fat. So that, definitely makes a difference. So this, even Scott when we were talking about that. He was talking about how he didn't gain weight with
this weekend.
avoiding it.
Yeah. So at the time of this taping, Scott mentioned he didn't have any drinks on the weekend, and that he got on the scale and he hadn't gained any weight. So if you're usually getting on the scale Monday morning and saying, "Gosh, I'm like 2 or 3 pounds heavier or more," alcohol can be a part of that.
Yeah, for sure. So it's something to really think about when you're going on, a lifestyle change, a healthy change. And again, maybe it's having one drink instead of having a couple of drinks both nights of the weekend, right?
What about the alcohol, carbs? People who want to be thin are saying, okay, I'm just having my, tequila and soda or vodka and soda, or trying not to have the additives. Does that make it any healthier?
Yeah, so from a caloric standpoint, yes, right? Your calories are down, but you still got that alcohol in there, and the alcohol itself is impacting your fat storage and fat burning capacity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how should you think about having a drink nowadays?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are choosing to not drink, which is a great option. That would be the best option, but also reducing your alcohol intake. So depending on what it is now, again, the World Health Organization says that healthier is reducing alcohol intake, right? So wherever you are on your journey, cut back, right? That's a first step, and then see how much more you can cut back. And that's what Sober October is all about, is try this for a month. And the research does show that people will start drinking less. So then when they're done with their Sober October, as we head into the holidays, people will not maybe drink. It's being shown that people won't actually consume as much alcohol then.
Yeah, and Sober October is a little bit newer, but then there's Dry January.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of people have heard of Dry January. And so when you talk to your patients after they've done something like this, what do they tell you?
Yeah, they usually say that they definitely feel better. They're sleeping better. And we know sleep is really important for health and metabolism. So that's probably the biggest difference that people will see, is the improvement in sleep, a little bit more energy, maybe less of that up and down with weight after a weekend if they're really just drinking on weekends. But then they start to realize their relationship with alcohol has changed a little bit, right? So now they might have been experimenting with a lower calorie, non-alcoholic drink, right? People are doing mocktails, and there's problems with some of those because they're loaded in sugar.
Right. And sometimes the mocktails look really good, but I'm like, this is soda.
Yeah.
I might as well have, Coca-Cola or something. So you have to be careful with the calories perspective.
You still do need to be careful with that, because high sugar is bad for your microbiome too, right?
Okay.
So you're not going to get any benefit that way. But then they're just drinking less. Then they're also saying I feel better. So they've had an experience with that, and they might not cut it out completely, but they're feeling better and not having as much, not drinking as often either.
Well, just changing the conversation from all the news stories we've done over the years about this could help this, or, I've interviewed cardiologists over the years who've talked about red wine can help your heart.
Yeah.
Basically, all that discussion's going out the window with the new data. And that's why a lot of other countries, I don't know when America's going to do it, but a lot of other countries have come on to say, at your own peril. There's no health benefit to this.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the difference, really, ultimately, is the messaging that alcohol is not a health food, right?
Ever.
Yeah, it's not. Right?
Any form of it.
And you could, maybe you're relaxed a little bit. Okay.
Does it help
fine.
with anxiety?
No. The research shows it doesn't help with anxiety or depression. It makes it worse.
It makes it worse.
So there's no
people will say,
there.
tequila's not a depressant. And that's a whole thing on the internet. Not true, right? All alcohols are depressant?
Alcohol is a depressant, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing that this certain alcohol is going to make me feel good and give me energy.
Yeah.
Not true.
Yeah, I'd like to see the study on that.
Okay. Okay.
Not true.
Is it worse for women?
Yeah, so women don't metabolize alcohol as effectively as men. We don't have enough of, or as much of this enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase. So this is why the recommendations were originally set up in the United States as 2 drinks a day for a man and 1 drink for a woman, because our blood alcohol levels will get higher from 1 drink.
Not even just because of our size.
Yeah, no, it's not even that. It's about the gender difference in the enzyme that processes alcohol.
And I think a lot of women will notice that they feel much different having a glass or two of wine or any kind of drinks later in life, in midlife, than they did, say, in college for sure. They'll say, gosh, this is really affecting me much more. Why is that?
So there's not a lot of research I can find on that. But what it looks like is going on from like a couple of papers I read is that back to the microbiome, the bacteria in your gut, some of those bacteria, having like a healthy amount of certain types of bacteria, helps you process like the end products of alcohol. So alcohol gets metabolized through a couple of different stages. And so people feel really poorly because the end products are not getting metabolized properly by their gut bacteria, that by the time we're like perimenopausal, menopausal, also age and hormones affect the microbiome in the gut. So that's what it's looking like. That's what I see as like the most plausible explanation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And fatty liver is a huge problem in America, right?
Oh, yeah.
What is that? Because people are doing all kinds of detoxes, cleanses, and I know you're a big fan of detoxes so long as they're done the right way in your practice. But people talk about fatty liver, and is that a real thing, or is it just what alcoholics have?
Yeah. So fatty liver is the accumulation of fat in your liver, and it can come from and that causes damage, and it can progress and become fibrotic, and you can even get cirrhosis. Yet we used to see this mostly just with alcoholics, that's how that would develop. What we have an epidemic of now is non-alcoholic fatty liver, and this is from what we call metabolic disease, or high levels of glucose in our bloodstream, insulin resistance.
Okay.
Because of obesity, eating too many carbs. So really with fatty liver, you basically treat it very similarly to how you would treat someone who's pre-diabetic. And typically with fatty liver, we always see like insulin resistance and sometimes pre-diabetes, depending on like how early you're catching it. If it's more advanced, a lot of those patients already have type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
Yeah. But then there are really targeted supplements that we think about, berberine, that we use for glucose control. There are a lot of really good studies showing that berberine is really excellent for fatty liver. So that's one of like the primary supplements that we even use for patients with fatty liver.
Yes, you're reminding me. I'm out of my berberine. I need to get more berberine. If you're going to get it, I'll give a little free advice. You like to prescribe the Metagenics version?
Yeah, Metagenics is excellent. Biotics is another one that I use.
Okay.
There's like the Metagenics has some green tea in there as well. So
and I
really
drink my
like
green
that
tea
about
every
it.
day.
Yeah, so it's excellent. Like that's a good thing.
The reason I drink green tea is I've done CURES now for 20 years, and every doctor will tell you that across the spectrum, green tea solves a lot of problems. So I'm like, okay, I'll just drink green tea.
Yeah,
it's good for your metabolism.
Yes.
It's good for your polyphenols. Like, just have your green tea and your dark chocolate. It's really yummy, and it's good for you,
We're
right?
still on board with that.
Okay.
That has not changed.
Just because people are now going to ask if they do get berberine, you can start with one capsule with just 500 milligrams, but you do as much as 3, like a day.
Oh, yeah. And
so
some
1,500.
patients we're putting them on like 2 with 3 meals a day. So we might even be doing like a total of 6.
Forever, or just until you get things under
for
control?
a good amount of time. And it really depends on how much like lifestyle change the patient is doing as well. Meaning like, are they working on their stress? Are they working on their diet? All that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So again, it's all connected. We have a lot of a metabolic disorder. We just are having too much processed food, too much sugar, and too much alcohol.
Yeah.
But the first thing that you would like people to do is maybe change the thought that alcohol is actually good for you on any level.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't. So that I would say
it doesn't
that's
mean you
the
can never
first thing.
drink, but just know that like when you eat a Twinkie, we know that's not good for us.
Right. And when we say like don't have any of that, like people aren't compliant with that. But that really concept of reducing and changing that mindset about like, oh, this drink is not good for my heart.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna continue to talk about the difference of what kinds of alcohol, how much, how do you cut back, and how much difference is right after we take a quick listen from our sponsor, who actually coincidentally is talking about addiction of another form.
Struggling with gambling? Wheeler Health's Better Choice program offers personalized support and treatment to help you regain control. Visit WheelerHealth.org to learn more and take the first step towards recovery today.
Okay, as we're coming back to CURES, talking about alcohol and learning that Other countries have already changed their guidelines. Maybe the United States will do it, but the research being clear across the world, alcohol is only something that hurts our health, has no health benefit at all, and in fact, it can hurt us quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, like the guidelines have changed quite a bit, and the research is definitely showing us that alcohol affects our gut health, and that is why we have all these sort of like health consequences from consuming alcohol.
And not just alcohol, we're eating a lot of bad things, but the other thing is so much of what you do, and you help, where maybe people are not getting treated by their regular MD for so many of the things that they end up in your office for. But gut health is at least making into the mainstream. We now know that we should try to have probiotics. We should try to do certain things. In fact, my director, Jamie, was just asking, what about kombucha? Will that help us? Do you mix alcohol with your kombucha? I guess there's kombucha drinks out there. And does any of this negate or help, or how do we help?
Yeah, I would say, so what we do to help is first start thinking about dietary strategy. So when I think about diet, I don't always think about kombucha first. I think about what do we need to get rid of, and then what do we need to add in? So
weed and seed.
Yes, exactly. So you get rid of, processed food essentially is really bad for your gut, and then what's really good for your gut is plants, right? Having the fiber from plants is what bacteria will use to basically fuel their energy. And
any plants, just having a big salad a day, big salad a day can be life-changing.
Exactly. And then also making sure you have a lot of different color and variety in the types of plants you eat. So a lot of times what I'll tell patients to do is really just make a large salad, enough for 3 days worth. And then you can just, obviously don't put the dressing on it then, but then you have this big, diverse, nice salad. It's easy. You can just take some if you're going to work, or if you're at home and you're busy, you've got your salad there ready to go.
Okay.
And then have lean protein, healthy fat with that. And that's really, the basis for good gut
bacteria. Put some
bacteria.
avocado on it.
Yep.
Put some pumpkin seeds, olive oil.
Yes, olive oil. So instead of a pre-made dressing, just use olive oil and lemon, and even the drinks that you have, we talked about green tea, that's actually the phytochemicals. So green tea doesn't have any fiber in it, but those phytochemicals, what, gives plants their color.
Okay.
And taste typically a little bit bitter is really good for your bacteria. And studies will show that those compounds, things like curcumin even, the bacteria will respond to those compounds and kind of balance out in the right level. So it's almost that's another thing that we call it's a prebiotic. In the scientific literature now, they talk about things like quercetin and resveratrol. All these polyphenols are actually prebiotics.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if lifestyle changes, if you're not ready to do dry January or sober October, which is a whole month, just because you can't do the whole month, maybe you're going to do mostly October, or you're going to say, I'm not going to drink Monday through Friday. How much of a change would make a difference in your health?
Yeah. So it really depends on where you're coming from, right? So if you're someone that really just has a drink a week or 2 drinks a week, cutting it out completely is not going to make a huge, huge difference, right? But if you're someone who's drinking daily, or drinking 3 or 4 times a week and drinking a couple of drinks on each occasion, cutting it out is going to be noticeable, right? That's when we really see patients really saying they're noticing changes in their sleep, their energy, their mood, they're not up and down. And then we start to see even some of these changes with digestive symptoms too. So that's another thing we didn't talk about yet, is that alcohol could be one of the reasons why people are having some digestive symptoms, more diarrhea prone or irregular. A lot of that is kind of really signaled by the bacteria in your gut.
Okay. So if you want to make a positive change, let me ask you this. Is there any difference between hey, I'm a beer drinker, I'll switch to wine, or I'm a wine drinker, I'll switch to just tequila and soda? Anything between the alcohols that would make one better or worse?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, yes. If you're having anything that's higher sugar content, that's bad. So if you're drinking rum and Coke.
Don't do that.
And even if it's Diet Coke, so even diet, the artificial sugars, those are probably worse for your gut bacteria than even the regular sugar is.
Right. That I've learned from folks like you for a long time. Diet Coke, no question. Diet Coke is worse than regular Coke, right?
So
Neither one are good,
benefit.
but don't have the artificial.
Yeah. But if you're having like tequila and club soda or, vodka.
Seltzer water and vodka.
Yeah, exactly. Where it doesn't have any sugar or sweetener in there, then that's probably going to be better. Or a glass of wine, right? Because wine is just like polyphenols.
Is wine counted though? I always think of wine as being very sugary, very carb.
It depends on the type of wine. So the sweeter wines are actually going to have like more of a rise in blood sugar from that kind of.
So if you have like a dry red
insulin.
wine, it won't have as much impact on your blood sugar?
Yeah, or even like drier whites. Yep.
What if you make sure you eat the wine like you would? The more you're learning about blood sugar, we should not have sugar on an empty stomach. Try to have it after a salad or, eat dessert after dinner, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is it the same with wine? Like try to have your wine with food.
Yes.
It'll have less of an impact on your microbiome.
Yeah, for sure. So when we're working with patients, we really take that personalized approach. So if someone's not really ready to like stop drinking, we start to like try to buffer it a little bit, right? So if someone is having like a cocktail before dinner, I'll have them have like some olives with that, right?
Okay.
Like eat a little something before dinner if you're having that drink to
It
really
just
buffer
slow
the
down
effect.
and help not spike your insulin as much.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
it's more about the insulin surge.
So we need to think about that when you're having just a glass of wine, which often you go to a cocktail party and that's all that's given, right? It's like the cocktail party before you go to dinner.
Yeah.
But that's the equivalent of, that's really shooting up the insulin more than if you sat down and had wine with your food.
Yes, exactly. So ideally you sit down and have with your meal, but if it's pre-meal, then have some olives, have some nuts. Even with holiday parties, I'll often tell people to like eat a little something before they go. And then
not bread, not more sugar, like a non-carb thing.
Yeah, we're talking about like nuts, cheese, if you tolerate dairy.
Anything that'll kind of slow it
bit.
down a little. Okay.
Yeah.
So given this, has it changed just even yourself, how you think about alcohol?
Yeah, for sure. Like, absolutely. When those guidelines kind of came out, and even like in the literature, I was definitely seeing more, talk of like alcohol affecting the gut bacteria. So it was already kind of like, oh, this is not sounding like all this information that was coming out before about it being heart healthy. If it's affecting my gut, like these are not going together for me. But yeah, like now I really have, I would be more likely to just try to stick with like a glass and keep it like once or twice a week kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it different? I mean, we know young people drink at college, and unfortunately, we know teenagers drink sometimes too. But is it, we've talked about how certain things like cannabis or things like that can actually hurt the developing brain more. We think that the younger you are, alcohol doesn't affect you as much, or you can get up and go the next day.
Yeah.
But are you worried about young people? Is it more or less dangerous for them, or it's just in general? I know their habits tend to be more.
Yeah.
They drink
So
more.
there's a lot to kind of unpack there. So.
And I only have a minute or so left.
Yeah,
so.
that's all. So binge drinking is really bad for your gut bacteria, and it's just like a high risk of injury situation.
Okay,
Right?
yeah.
So that's like so bad. The other thing, these kids are going to college and they're eating poorly too. So then you start throwing alcohol on top of it, and kids can get really unhealthy. Right?
Really unhealthy,
Quickly.
right,
Yeah.
right. And they probably can bounce back sooner, but just good for them to know.
Yeah.
Especially if they're athletes and they're trying to perform.
yeah,
I know
for
you have a son
sure.
in college who's
Yep.
an athlete, and
Yeah.
it does impact performance.
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. So, Dr. Stagg, where can people find you?
I'm in Farmington, so we have a practice with 3 other naturopathic doctors. My husband's who's a chiropractor. We're near the health center.
Whole
Yukon
Health Wellness Center. And you take insurance.
We do take insurance.
And follow you at Dr. Stagg.
Yep.
Yes, she was just speaking about the microbiome in Taiwan. So thank you so much. I think I'm going to think a little bit more about my alcoholic beverage, and I hope you will consider it too. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.
CURES is sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.